Hey guys, Koss here, and welcome to Tarkov Today. Tarkov Today is a community discussion that takes place 1 week after the latest patch. Together we discuss the latest implementations, changes, fixes and bugs that have arisen, and also how we feel the game development is turning, along with any suggestions or changes that might help tweak the game and level up the overall gameplay experience. Before we get started, I'd like to apologize and say that the first 20 minutes of this call were not recorded due to a microphone issue, and we're going to continue on from when my mic kicks back in. So guys, so hopefully you'll be able to pick up and enjoy the video.
The animations, you can't switch weapon or nothing.
Yeah, which is really sad because it's such a good gun.
Yeah.
Would the holding or, and the Speedo says, would holding or and selecting your mag fix this? Or do you still need to, or do no magazines show up as available if you haven't searched your backpack yet? Or your tac vest yet?
I don't think we've tried, to be honest.
It's alright. It's one we can find out.
I had a friend of mine try it in PvE, and he said no matter what he did, he couldn't get out of the infinite reloading bug. Because with the shotgun, it doesn't just make you put the gun up in the air to your side. It literally makes you reload over and over again. So you're already stuck in an animation, so you can't do anything else.
Cool. Moving on to let's go. We're gonna hold on for scabs for a little bit. The noise improvement while walking through vegetation now depends on your movement speed. Has anybody felt any major differences through this? I do personally feel that it has changed, but what I do find the biggest problem with is if you're sitting near a bush or a tree, if you're within the range of the branches, you get this like looping audio sound of as if you're constantly moving through the bush where actually you're static. I think that's my only major feedback about this is that they've introduced this audio loop that gives away your position. Okay, next one is your step noise. I don't play a lot of factory, so I don't pay attention to my step noise too often. Does your movement speed now adjust the? Does your movement speed now like impact the volume of your step noise?
It doesn't. It already doesn't to yourself. I don't know if it does to other people. It doesn't. It hasn't infected yourself. I don't know if anyone's tested that. You know what I'm saying? Like it sounds the same. Your footsteps sound the same to yourself that they always have. I don't know if it's different for other players that you're around or not.
And I don't think so. Since before the patch, I was able to change the movement speed, and for me, my sound was changing according with my speed. If I was super slow, I would not produce any noise even on wooden floor. Right now, it changed a bit on the gravel or metal. That was really noisy and difficult to lay down the noise. It's a bit easier to hide your footsteps, but I don't know if it works for other people since Angel didn't.
Just on the topic of footsteps, I've heard it. I haven't tested it myself, but the headphones that you can buy from Pusher, do those like
work?
Enhance like what the hearing?
So the feature of the contacts is there's a kind of a twofold benefit they do. Contacts increase the ambient volume in your surroundings, so it's easier to hear footsteps from other players and stuff like that. On a side, what they do is they if you get like a flashbang going off in close proximity to yourself, they actually turn off the audio in your headset and they become ear defenders, so you don't get deafened by the sound of audio nearby. So yes, that's what they're supposed to do, but currently in game they have zero value, and at nighttime they just give away your location because they're extremely reflective.
Okay.
Yeah, I read some guys that a guy had the files of the game. The file for the contacts was all set to false right now.
Okay. Water hit sound effect. I'm gonna skip this one because I don't see there's massive amount of value in talking about this. Let's start moving on to the scav update. So the first side of things is the AI spawning with like full equipment. How do you feel about what the scavs spawn with now? And have you got any concerns? Because there's one that I have I have actually a pretty big problem with.
So at the beginning of the patch, before the hot fixes, I noticed that scavs spawn with defender armor a lot more often. Like off of one factory run, you would get like three sets of defender. And then after the hot fix, for some reason, I don't know if they changed it on purpose or what, but scavs has been spawning with a lot less expensive or modified weapons and armor. And
Just on that, I don't know if it's just me, but I found out that they come a lot later into the game now than they used to before. I don't know if that's just me, but they do still come just later, much later.
well,
So-
my group would camp until they stopped spawning at 10 minutes. So
So Dobby, you're saying that the
Uh,
scavs get harder, or the scavs get better equipment the later on they spawn is what you believe.
That's just what I've experienced.
Okay, well I can put that down and we can try and see if we can get some clarification.
I don't know, for me it's random. Every wave has different enemies.
I don't know because when I joined the Factor Raid, I usually press O to check how many time left. Since the scavs spawn about 2 minutes in, sometimes I would press it say to me 39 and something, like the raid starts 1 minute ago and I joined late. But then I see scavs body around, people already shooting themselves, and I think now it's kind of hard to tell when the raid initially started, because my tactic is not working anymore. I press see I had time to scavs and then they are already in the game, so I don't know how to opine on that.
So I'll try and finish what I was gonna say about scavs. I don't think that they should continue spawning with really good things on factory, just for the fact that there's 5-man groups that farm it, and it makes the whole idea of trading kind of not really useful. I mean, the only reason why you would trade is to upgrade the prepper to buy weapons that are rare spawns, but why would you upgrade pusher if you can just grind factory with your friends and get it all? If that makes any sense. So my concern is it's going to it's going to ruin the trading system, and whenever supposedly there's going to be an auction, whenever that comes out, it could possibly inflate the prices of certain things that scavs are going to be constantly spawning with because of a set algorithm. That's my biggest concern with it.
I actually think that's a very valid point. It makes total sense. And in fairness, I think while Factory seems to be the most played map right now, I think trying to get people off Factory and into other maps, I think possibly lowering the value of the gear that the scavs bring into Factory, would probably be like a welcomed incentive to try and get more players onto maps like Customs Woods, Streets of Tarkov, and Shore.
That's a good idea. Another thing that I saw gives that sometimes they shoot you, but the bullets don't register. Like one time I was on an X guy, and the scav hit me like fucking 3 times. Not even I didn't even lost 1 HP even.
Was this like before last weekend or
No,
after last
happened
weekend?
today.
Okay, I'll put that down. Just while we're talking about scavs and shooting you in accuracy, how do we find the scavs shots and stuff like that? I think we briefly touched on it in the sense of scavs are still engaging you at like 200 meters with a handgun when looking through a keyhole. Is there any other fringe cases like this where we believe that like scavs are they just still need a little bit of tweaking to get right?
I think that far away they've gotten a lot better, but just up close and personal, they still insta-kill you in my experience.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah.
don't think there was much though. I do think they've improved her slightly, or I've got better as a player. But you can definitely, it's like what you said, Carson. You can definitely, like you say, there's still problems with them being able to heal, shoot you from foliage and what have you.
So when
I
it comes
don't
to
know if
scav,
the
when it comes to scav
go, man.
accuracies, I feel like someone already said, yeah, like from far away, it's gotten a lot better. But if someone truly convinced me that the scav was a player, I would feel like that player had aimbot because, like you said, from 200 yards away with a Makarov, you should not be able to kill me if you were a player. I don't think anybody would be able to do that. That's like getting shot from the lake all the way to the other edge of lodging in woods with a Makarov and getting your legs busted and dying. I just don't see that happening. Like if scav mode came out today and there was players who were scavs and then there was scavs that were AI, I feel like you would know which ones are AI because of their accuracy.
This makes actually a lot of sense, especially given that like player scav is coming up um in the next month, and I think this is probably one of those things that they need to fix because you're obviously looking for the scav that you know is potentially a player because I'm not quite sure how far this is going to be, but like chances are a player scav might have better gear than an AI scav.
Well, it's not just that. It's like think about scavs, think about PvP in general. The best thing to do, say on factory, is to try and flank somebody and shoot them with a shotgun in the back. If you think that a scav is a player and you go to flank them, but it's an AI still have that insta one headshot, one tap aimbot feature at close range. So if you're trying to flank a player and you get one tapped by an AI for it, it's just not right. I think until AI get fixed, scav mode probably shouldn't come out until they fix AI a little bit more because you will notice the difference between players and scavs, not just by movement but by accuracy.
I didn't face the MLG Skype anymore. I didn't have any trouble. Skypes do react quicker than players. And one thing that happened to me is that the Scav tried to shoot me through the door on factory. It was a wooden door. I don't know if the shotgun didn't penetrate the door or it's not a thing yet in the game. But the Scav truly shot me through the door without me making any noise. So I don't know what happened, but it was very scary to get shot through the door and to see that it was a Scav on the other side.
So I believe that this is caused by something, and actually, you know what, I never thought about mentioning it, but it definitely is this. Scavs don't currently don't respect a door that has been reclosed. So if the door has never been opened, they can't see through it. But if a player opens it and then closes it, that door is open for the scavs. They don't see that it's being closed.
Could be it.
That's an issue.
Yeah, I'm just gonna write that down because to be honest, that's a pretty big one that just I don't think that we mention often enough. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely put that down as like something that we need to address. Um, moving on a little bit more on towards the scav equipment. I do want to like we mentioned fort armor and stuff like that in factory, and in woods we've got I think it's two scavs that spawn SVS and one scav that spawns defender armor. Depending obviously on what session it is and what the loot cycle is, but you know that's what we can get. Personally, I feel on a map that has nine players and what's that, 4 plus 7 and 7 scavs, and then whatever amount. I think there's 4 maximum player scavs. So you know, with a map that's going to have less than 13 players individually playing, I feel that 3 pieces of armor and an AK-74N is a little bit excessive in regards to the loot drop quality. I feel that like 1 piece of armor, or helmet or something like that. 1 fully geared armor is scav is fine, but I feel like 3 fully geared scavs that are quite easy to kill at distance, is too much loot drop, and I feel that it's just it's bumping up players. Like, I haven't bought armor this game. I've actually found it quite hard to level up pusher because I've had no need to buy armor at all.
Exactly. I leveled him up anyways just for testing, but I know what you mean. I felt the exact. I found myself buying night visions over and over again just to level him up.
Anybody else?
Maybe the weapon condition is not in yet, the system, the gems and everything. But I think that will be future that scavs will have poorly maintained guns, weapons, because since they are civilian, they don't know the basics, how to work with the gun. And maybe you have the same AK aim with the guy, the scav, but it's poorly maintained, it's jamming and everything. Maybe that will be payoffs. The it's a luxury weapon, but it's poorly maintained, and you get it jammed until you fix it or repair it. So I think that might be a thing to consider.
Okay.
Another thing on scav equipment, you say that it feels excessive, but in my opinion, I feel like the bigger maps you have the same chance of getting, how do I word it? On the bigger maps, there's about the same amount of loot as there is on factory if you were to stay for a while. Boxes, scavs, chances of armor. So why would anybody play on a bigger map, which is just higher risk for the same reward? I think that's why people aren't playing customs. That's why people aren't playing woods. Because why would you go onto a bigger map that takes longer for the same amount of loot? I don't think anybody would do that.
Absolutely.
How do we word this? So should we mention this in the sense of incentivizing players to play on bigger maps?
Yes, sir.
So do you either reduce the drop on factory, or
No.
or do we increase the do you increase the drop rate on the likes of woods or customs, or do you increase the quality drop on woods and customs and reduce the quality drop on factory?
Well,
I think you could do a combination of all.
Yeah, I don't really see the point in reducing factory, but like woods, I'll use an example. I've always thought that it has low incentive for anything for going to sawmill. Say, there's no, except for killing the scavs now that are there. There's really no incentive to go there. I know you can get like 2 Sliway out of the one barn thing, but there's really no incentive to actually go into sawmill, whatever you guys call it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Cool.
What I think would fix it is if you like go onto the map, if you hit escape from Tarkov and you click on them, they're all the same difficulty. Why would a bigger map be the same difficulty as a smaller map with less people? That makes no sense to me. I think to really up the difficulty on the bigger maps, make more scavs spawn more often, put the quality of loot a little bit higher, so maybe 2 or 3 defenders a match, but less guns, less better guns. Give them AKSs, Makarovs, like you normally do. And then on factory, make sure that they don't spawn defender. That way you have an incentive to go and play woods. You can get 3 defenders if you go and play woods with your friends. But if you play factory, you're stuck getting, soft armor, which isn't bad. It's a quicker match. You're getting what you deserve for playing a small map, which is super quick. But if you go and play woods and you bring a tri-zip, you got 2 defenders, like right there if you're lucky. That would give someone the incentive to, I'm going to try and get those defenders on woods.
Should work for weapons too. Since the factories now, SMGs and shotguns are around, not rifles. And since woods and customs are bigger, rifles should kick in. You remove the AKs from the factory scavs and put them on the woods or customs.
Yep, I agree.
That sounds fair.
Okay. Also, I did really like one thing that you mentioned in the sense of, incentivizing players to play together. Like gaming is more fun when you play with somebody else, and I think that's the kind of weird thing that Escape from Tarkov is at right now, is that it seems to be a lot of individual players because it's like you and maybe one friend who really like this genre of game and who are willing to spend, this quite significant price for getting access to the alpha, and your friends are kind of waiting in the wings for the beta to launch. And I think this is one thing you said. It was like incentivizing people to go and make friends and go and make teams and play with them and get them into customs and woods and reap the rewards of this group and team play. Whereas factory essentially is like, oh, I'm bored. I've got 10 minutes to play or 10 minutes to kill. Let's just go and just mow down as many players as I can with a Saiga and a defender and just run out, because you're completely right. What's the incentive to play Woods for 40 minutes and lose your VSS versus fuck it, I have a 30 grand Saiga. I can I can mash through this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would not happen. That will not happen until the VoIP or the karma system, because right now there's no point sparing a faction friend. If you are a bear, you saw a running bear with the axe. There's no point letting him live, because if he picks a weapon, he will try to kill you. And there's no point helping the other factions, because since we are not more fighting the contract wars anymore, there should be a perk to help the other faction, I think. But there's no incentive right now. You do because you are good willing, you are lawful good, but there's no reward to it. There's no way to communicate that, look, I not shoot you until you shoot me or something.
I think what he means isn't don't kill other players that you see in the match. I think what he means is literally going and looking, because this is what I meant, is literally going and looking for a group of friends. Like I have a friend in here right now, Knight. We go into factory together. I don't like to play without him or a couple of my other friends.
Yep.
Because I know people will shoot me. I know that there's 5-man people camping the extraction point. I think what he meant is going and getting your group of friends, and instead of camping extraction, saying, hey, let's go and get that defender that might be on woods. Because if it's not in factory, you have to go to woods to get it. You have to go to customs to get it.
Yeah, exactly. This is in the sense of like utilizing Discord, utilizing the forums, the Reddit, random people you see in Twitch. Like it doesn't matter where you get it, but like I probably have like 4 people that I play with that I trust to play with, and I'll play fully geared, and I really put myself to the test in regards to my ability playing with them, because I know when I need to challenge, when I need to play safe, when I need to try and set up an ambush. And you really see the game becomes like infinitely more enjoyable when you're playing with someone that you've got like consistent communication with, and you know what's happening in the background, where you're not having to take it on this like ridiculously super slow pace because you know your back's not covered. So yeah, that's exactly what you were saying. Let's move on to these bigger maps. Let's find a reason to play Woods. And the reason I only play Woods is because this is where the geared guys come to play at nighttime. And that's why I kind of hunt down this map at nighttime, because you've got your night vision goggles, you've got your armory, you've got, AK-74Ns, your M4s, your VSSs, your SV98s, all of this sort of stuff kind of comes here. So yeah, I really feel the case of like if you want to go and just casually grind, factory is an amazing way to play. But if you want to level up the engagement with the game and go for that late game loot, then it shouldn't be based on your map. It should be based on your ability as a team. And I can't remember who said it, but like, making the bigger maps harder. So for example, like the lumber mill having 2 defenders and a tri-zip in some locker would be fucking amazing if there was 15 scavs and a sniper scav that you
See,
guys.
that's exactly what I meant. That is exactly what I was trying to say.
Where I'm just like, dude, like we have to go through here and we just need to fight our way through the shit and get this. But it has to be like, fuck, we need a sniper because like in lumber mill, your back is completely open. And I think this is kind of the meta that we've gone to, is you see groups now holding on in like some little corner somewhere for like 20, 25 minutes till most players have extracted already before taking on scavs. And I think this is the one thing, is that like you should be taking on this big fuck off fight, and you have someone who's like covering your rear, because there is that hatchet player, there is that guy with a silenced M4 that's like slowly picking off your team otherwise. And this is the shit that you want a team for. And it's what like Nikita said on the stream the other day in his Q&A, is that like the guys who are from the army and who know how to play properly and cover themselves off, they'll be better at that game. But he says that with no incentive to play like that right now. And I think that's the thing that we're missing, is that little bit of incentive where team play is a core mechanic in this game. Because right now, it's not. And I don't think Karma is going to fix that immediately anyway.
We're thinking a lot. We're thinking a lot in the short term when it comes to incentivizing maps. We're trying to use the existing mechanics in order to change that, which I think, is important, in that a lot of Walker's points are valid, in that you can essentially get the same loot, but with a lot more ease or less risk if you just stay in a smaller map, where it's a lot easier to know positioning, to not have to move physically very far to loot all the boxes. But I think it's important to note that we're going to eventually see things like missions or contracts or little events that will occur. And I think that those are going to be map-based. And I think the developers could communicate a little bit more exactly what their intentions with those are. Like maybe they'll spawn some super full-geared corpse onto the map. They'll just plop it down somewhere and says, hey, this guy's done a shit on him. If you spawn in now, you have a chance to go loot it. And that'll cause like a sort of a bum rush to move to explore a map and search for something.
That's actually cool.
Like there'll be these little dynamic events, which I think will, maybe maybe there's a crashed truck here, or somebody dropped a big crate, or like a bunch of other little events or dynamic spawns that would occur. That's another thing I sort of make a point every so often, is I think that dynamic loot spawning is infinitely more valuable than simply having a set number of high value loot spawns in the form of the crates, because those become predictable, and I know that people will eventually begin to figure out the fastest route between them, and that gamifies things. And we're trying to make a game that's kind of not like a game. I know that sounds a little oxymoronic, but having it be that way really makes it so that you can very predictably find people. And I think that's why I suggest these like dynamic, here's a dead PMC, you can take his stuff, or here's a dropped crate. The dynamic spawns make people want to search the map because they don't know where it is, and they don't know where this really high value equipment comes from. And that makes it interesting, because you're no longer, maybe someone's waiting here at this bottleneck, maybe I think some people already checked the area. That to me makes the game really test the player's skill and mix things up if it has those mechanics.
I think it makes sense. Like, you see people spawn, like right now, if I spawn into a game, the first thing I do is take 2 steps backwards, and then the next thing I do is I press O. And based on what that figure comes up in regards to the time on the map, completely defines what I do, because my loot run, effectively I'm doing a loot run one way, shape, or form. And whether it's looting through killing players, or looting through getting 1 or 2 sites hit first before other players, is that deciding factor. And if I spawn in on woods and I spawn 6 minutes in, although one of the best places to hit for a quick loot run is the underground bunker in the forest with the 4 crates, if I'm 6 minutes in, I'm probably going to ignore that, because I'm trying to get ahead of players who may be taking it longer to get towards the end of the map. And I've gone to a point of, I'm not trying to get crates right now. I'm trying to find the players who have already looted those crates. And I feel like that's one of those things where, your knowledge of the map is something that needs to be brought in, and incentivizing knowing more than just, if I follow this road and these are my 3 or 4 places, I should know that, there is an area of the map that we never explore on XYZ map, but I do know that there's places where stuff may potentially spawn in a dynamic setup, and not necessarily because one of these 5 possible outcomes happened, but because it's once a day at some stage this happens where, I don't know, a truck drives through customs and breaks down and gets raided by the scavs and you're getting whatever leftover stuff, or I don't know. But yeah, I definitely agree that the dynamic options for like being more valuable than static fixed. There is one scav that has defender on this map, or there is an M4 in this particular crate once every 5 games. Is brings definitely more immersion and more value to the game. Um, in regards to the AI improvements, I'm just gonna try and run through these quickly and see can we maybe just yes or no, has this happened, or if someone wants to expand on it, please do. Um, AI can now set up ambushes in random places at will. Uh, does anybody feel like this is a thing? I personally feel that this is not a thing because let's say I'm going to call it their zone of movement. It seems to be quite limited. If I think of certain areas, like scavs will never leave lumberyard in woods. They'll never leave within maybe 50 feet of the hill on at the extraction in woods. If they see somebody, they should group up and start trying to chase that guy in some way, shape, or form. And maybe it brings its own problems in the sense of you're baiting scavs out where someone, brings them through a bottleneck and they're super easy to kill. But I don't feel like ambushes are a thing. Like, I feel like when you say ambushes are random, yeah, they should fucking ambush the extraction point. Like, why is there 9 players randomly going to this one car on woods?
I don't know in other maps, but in Factory it already happened to me. But this cav tried to flank me on the wrong side and exposed itself for me. I was hiding. He heard me. He tried to flanking and stopped it. Literally, the sound was really close and stopped it. Then when I searched around, I found him behind a crate. Waiting for that direction that I was making noise since I walking around slowly.
The way I feel about ambushing in particular, I don't want to sound rude. I like the developers of this game, but I feel like they did the whole No Man's Sky thing. Like with No Man's Sky, you needed internet to connect to play the game. You needed your system connected to the internet, but they went out of their way and said you could play with other people online. I feel like what the developers of this game did this patch was they made it to where scavs will flank you, because they will. If you shoot a shotgun, they'll try and come behind you from a corner. But then I feel like they blew it up and said they'll set up ambushes for you and they'll wait for you. They don't do that. I've never seen a scav do that, and I don't think they do, because all you have to do is shoot a shotgun in a closed corridor and they're all going to come to you.
Okay. So I think this is one thing. I'm going to reword it a little bit. The original statement was that they had also learned hiding out and letting enemy come close. I feel like this is a little bit of like they'll camp and in certain areas where they know get high traffic and engage when they can secure a kill. Um, anybody want to go on this one?
I spotted a couple times scavs doing this thing. He first engages someone, then he just hides and waits for the people to the PMC to show up again, or the scavs just wait. He didn't commit to follow you up to where you were or the last sound you make.
Okay. One thing I think kind of discredits this statement was the fact that we're complaining about, players with or scavs with a Makarov trying to shoot you at 200 meters. So, where's this fine line between he's trying to kill me at 200 feet, um, regardless of it being an open space or not, or a shotgun, versus waiting for me to get closer and engaging me while I'm trying to extract, for example. I don't see that there. Um, the next one again kind of touches on this is the AI firing range is now logically limited by the weapon's effective distance. Um, I'm not really sure how true the statement is, given that again on woods I'm getting a shotgun and I'm getting handgun scavs shooting at me from um, what seems like ridiculous distances. I do believe that they are probably within the effective distance of the weapon. Well, actually, no, I don't agree because the shotgun shooting me from 150 meters is not an effective distance. I should be a lot closer before he tries to engage me. It should be not necessarily an effective distance, but a logical distance. If I'm shooting someone at 100 meters with a shotgun, I expect to have to use a ridiculous amount of rounds to secure a kill. So for that reason, I think they should be reverting to the waiting for enemies to come close before engaging. Um, Anybody anything to say on that one, or can I move on?
I think I think it's very true that the AI are not as blockheadedly stupid and weirdly broken as they used to be. They don't aimbot and they don't mindlessly move about. They're a little bit better with like taking cover after a shot or hiding when reloading. But yeah, the ambushing behavior and the waiting, luring behavior is not something I really observe that much. They still tend to prefer to play aggressively. This might just be an overall tweak that maybe having some AI play aggressively and then some play defensively would make it more interesting. That there are some AI who, even if you shoot, even if you make a lot of noise, they just stay where they are. They might very quietly reposition themselves. This might be hard to program. I do not know. But the idea is that you don't want to be able to predict scav behavior as a whole, because I think each scav should feel like an individual with maybe their own sort of mindset. Some might play as a team, some might play as they are alone. But the point being is that the behavior needs to be unpredictable. That's kind of maybe the point of belaboring right now, is unpredictability makes tactical situations interesting. It's also what makes them incredibly dangerous. If you are able to just game the system, like know how every scav will probably behave, know how every map is laid out at all times. I don't know, like the point you even made with the checking the timer, like at this point, maybe the timer should only start to count down if you have less than 30 minutes or something, and you can't check it beforehand, just so you can't do that and be able to predict player behavior when jumping into the map. Like, I'm really just in favor of making it so that you have very limited information to rely on as a player. Like, not to the point of unrealism. Like, here's an example. Like, if you have a watch, like in game, you can check a watch to see how much time has elapsed. But I believe having an artificial timer to show how long the map has been in spawn, that to me seems like an advantage that just simply wouldn't exist outside of the realm of a game. But back to the point about the scavs, I think that they are a lot better, but they also do sometimes like just walk through you. Like, maybe they need to implement like some sort of melee, because I notice if you run right into the face of a scav, they will not shoot you until they're like back up a few feet.
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical flaw. Like, if you're right in front of them, you have more time to react to them than they do to you. Anyway, I think I've made my point here.
I don't really have... I just want to say quick that personally, I really don't have a comment on the scavs. I see very little difference except for their spawn timers. But your idea on the clock, that's genius, man.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually writing it down here. I'm like, making it available.
But I really do have to disagree with you about you specifically said they don't aimbot you anymore and they don't have wonky movements. I completely disagree with that. Every single game in Factory, you will see a scav on the ramp near the forklift room, glitched, running into a circle into the wall. Every single game. There's one on Woods, there's one on Customs, and there's the famous one on Factory. And then other than that, any scav that turns a corner, if you don't have a helmet on or body armor, he will turn that corner and instantly headshot you. I've seen scavs do complete 90-degree turns and aimbot me in the head with Makarovs. They still do aimbot. It's very obvious. I think a lot of people agree. And the wonky movement, I see them doing stupid stuff all the time. I see them running backwards towards you. I see them running in place against a wall. They just, like I said earlier, if they were to release scav mode sometime this month without changing something to the AI, it would be stupid, because you would be able to tell who's a player and who's the AI just by how aimbody they are or how stupid they walk.
Now, come to think of it, maybe the AI during the firefight don't know where to go, and walks randomly until the threat is gone or they're killed. But I don't see AI I'm botting anymore. Not having to me. I didn't play too much, or I only play in Factory. Don't know how about the effective range in other maps. But the headshot scav is not appearing that much for me.
It does it for me. And another thing, yesterday I was playing with a group of people. If you shoot a scav, the scav won't attack anybody else that's around it. Like, I was in the face of a scav, and he was only attacking the guy that shot him.
Yeah. That's an old one.
Okay.
That's a point I need to agree with, is I maybe didn't make it clear when I was talking. Yeah, scavs still do things like they'll walk through you, which I find like, no, they should know you're there. And yeah, the turn time is also two things, like in getting stuck on things. Those things still exist. I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear that I didn't acknowledge those were still behaviors. But what did we talk about earlier, Course Centaur? Because like I wasn't here for like 45
No
minutes,
worries.
so
what we've
someone
hit,
could give me a quick rundown about what we were talking about earlier, I'd appreciate it, because maybe I will have a point that I wanted to make that people already talked about earlier.
So right so far we've gone through is we're running through the patch notes, which are the anti-cheat, the extension of the map, some feature changes in regards to what works, the game chat. I've skipped the bug fixes and stuff like that. And now we're on to the AI improvements. So we're still going to what the next things we're gonna talk about are the likes of in coming up are the combat healing and some of the feature changes that happened in regards to your gameplay, the map updates, and any bugs or small tweaks or changes that we believe need to be made to fix the current game state. Whether this is something that they've implemented and just needs to be tweaked a little bit, or if there's something that's like completely missing that needs to be fixed, or absolute game breakers, or maybe you have a couple of tips that you've learned recently or whatever. We're going to get to them in the near future.
Okay, like, is it okay if I make a point that I sort of talked about before that involves both AI and player behavior?
Sure.
That, like, so me and Walker talked a little bit. We thought about, so the gunplay is very realistic. You know, gun noises are effective. Like, I think the sound and visual design of this game is very solid. I don't think it'll barely have to be tweaked between now and beta and release. But thinking about it, firing a fully automatic rifle in an enclosed space with no visible ear protection, you would be deaf. You would not be. You'd barely hear anything. And I thought about this, and I was like, you know, should we implement this in the game, or should it be implemented? Because like, there's really no point to having the headset at now besides the cosmetic thing. And maybe more items would be necessary to implement this. But say it is implemented, we implement realistic hearing damage. If you mag dump, Makarov in a room, you will hear just constant ringing, and everything will be muffled for quite some time. On the flip side, then I thought, okay, maybe you can implement that for players, because there's already like some ear ringing for grenades or whatnot. You could always put that in as an effect, like sound muffling and then the ringing. But what about the AI? Because if the AI don't experience it and players do, that creates an unfair advantage where AI can shoot interiors to the heart's content, and if players return fire, they can no longer hear AI positioning movement. So I thought, okay, could you apply it to AI then? But would that become an additional constraint or difficulty with programming? Like, how do you program an AI to know if it has hearing damage or not, and how will that change its behavior? Will it no longer be able to hear you moving about, even if you're below a certain sound threshold? Like,
I feel like it's possible. I mean, how are you going to program an AI to know if its leg is broken or if its arm is broken so it can't aim as well? I don't know, but they said they're going to do it. So I think it's possible. And I think it's an amazing idea, like I told you before when we were talking alone. The fact that they could put something like that into the game, if they did, would make this game go from 100% realistic to 200%, because then you would actually have to pick and choose your fights and shots, especially in close range battles like in Factory, where everything's a hallway, everything is a metal room. That would make the game that would make it so much better, because you wouldn't have to be afraid that some guy in tunnels is going to unload a full clip into you and you have nowhere to run or hide. he can't unload that full clip into you, or else you could just flank him and he won't be able to hear you. So I think it's an amazing idea, especially since most people use shotguns. You can't blast a shotgun in a metal room like that 4 or 5 times in a row.
And to add to this, just last little bit of it is the Comtech had said it's like 11,000 rubles. So making that essentially mandatory to play in enclosed space, I think, is undue burden. So to compensate, you'd probably add like really low cost. Like there are like woodworking headphones that are really basic, and they might cost like 1 to 3K rubles. And they might muffle sound overall a little bit, so maybe you can't hear other footsteps or everything, but they protect your hearing. You'd be able to shoot a gun without blowing out your eardrums. And then on the very low end, there might be earplugs, which muffle your hearing even more, but they also protect your hearing. And I think that would make it so that it would incentivize using things like headsets. But also there'd be lower cost alternatives that would have a slight, penalty in ambient sound perception, but they also get the job done of protecting your hearing.
Or you keep the Comtacs at an expensive amount, and people have to buy those if they want to, go and unload full shotgun rounds into a factory raid all the time. And that just gives them more incentive to go and play woods, which is a problem that we were thinking about earlier. So I think this just tied up to another thing. And if you had to buy Comtacs to be able to unload a full clip in hallways on factory, that would make you want to go play woods.
Okay,
True.
so someone said here, although this is... Hey, clean up guy, cheers for the host. So yeah, a quick one was, someone mentioned really quickly here that something like this is definitely more realistic, but is it going too far? Like, is it...
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I don't think it's going too far, but I question their ability to do that. I don't know.
It's
As I said,
okay. So let me just ask you this question, right? On a scale of like 1 to 5, 1 being like I really don't care if this was added, and 10 is like I need this in my life.
I just hopped in. What's the main discussion right now? I'm sorry.
We're talking about ear protection and issues of making the using your weapons using your weapons in enclosed spaces. Should they have
like
a negative
blasting your ears
impact?
out when you shoot a gun in close quarters, it'll make your ears ring.
Exactly.
Okay.
And should this be implemented? Is this going too far in regards to how realistic things are? Or
no, I think that'll be great.
I completely forgot to mention that suppressors totally come into this role. That suppressors are still loud. Like also like would they tweak that? Because I know suppressors are really quiet, and that always bothers me in games. Is like
currently what's going on right now is that the weapons, they don't have bullet snaps, nor are the suppressors. Basically, they all sound like they're shooting subsonic rounds. And
that's what I was thinking. It's like that's very quiet. Anyway, whatever.
From my understanding, it will change. But just later on down the line,
that's what I entirely forgot to mention. Yeah, that also incentivizes suppressor use because currently, they make you more quiet overall, but they also would allow you to fire in an enclosed space with less hearing damage, even if you didn't have hearing protection on. So I think that really implementing all these things like bullet drop, having to reload, taking more time or less to drop the mag, and all these little features, and then leaving out something as very basic as guns are loud and they will fuck up your hearing if you're not careful. That to me seems like a major oversight, but anyway.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next point for here, which was the introduction of the sniper scav. Overall consensus, I'm kind of sad that there's not one of Woods, giving it that it's the largest, most open map. But overall, like sniper scav, what's your opinions, and are there changes that need to be made? Did they hit the spot on what they were trying to do, or do we need changes?
Honestly, I think they're a terrible shot right now. I don't think they're as dangerous as they should be. I mean, there have been a few times I have been hit by them, but it's when I'm standing still and have been trying to shoot back at them, and we're like just both missing shots back and forth. And
that's pretty realistic. I mean, you're
well, I understand, but I've never been in a firefight. I've never seen combat before.
Okay.
I'm just speaking from a gameplay standpoint, and like how Escape from Tarkov is trying to hit this hardcore niche, making it challenging. You know what I mean? And also, like, one thing I've noticed too, the sniper scabs, if you've ever killed them and they've fallen off, most of the time, the kind of AKs that they have don't have a dust cover or a buttstock on them. And that seems just pretty silly to me.
Like, yeah, that's the thing, is shouldn't they have, like, I mean, like, they could have an AK with, like, a PSO-1, and that would be fair to me.
Yeah. I've seen ones with SV98s. Yeah,
that actually seems like a threat when they have a weapon that there could be more precise with and cause a lot of damage if it does hit. So
exactly. I believe once the SCIS comes in, I feel like that should be, you know, one of the primary weapons a sniper scab use, maybe even a Mosin, something like that. You know, something that's accurate, but they don't necessarily have the optics to really get a really good sight in on you and be able to always hit you all the time, you know. But, you know, that's just how I feel about it.
More old weapons.
I think they're perfect the way they are right now, because when scav mode comes out, you want players and scavs to be on the same exact level. If I didn't know that that was a scav up there, if players were able to go up there, I feel like I would think it was a player, because the sniper scavs are just as accurate as a player would be trying to snipe a running target. They're just as accurate as a player would be. Sometimes they hit you, sometimes they don't. If you stand still, they most likely will hit you, just like a player.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. The next one, moving on to here, was again they've pushed on into the reworked AI accuracy. I know we've mentioned in regards to like AI engaging you from unrealistic distances or through what essentially is a keyhole, but overall their accuracy, how do you find it? I know we mentioned that we don't feel like there's MLG like scavs anymore, but overall accuracy, what do you think?
Close range, it's horrible. Far away, it's fine.
Well, I was actually going to say the opposite. When I'm in factory, when I'm right next to a scav, they'll land every single shot on me every time. Like when I'm within 10 meters, they'll hit me every time. Whereas when I'm really far away, like they'll try and blast me with a shotgun, or when they do shoot, sometimes a lot of the shots land straight on. And there's this slight times when they'll just straight up land a headshot on you. They'll just kill you immediately. And I like that. There's still that slight risk of, like, if you're not careful, they'll still probably hit you right in the head.
But would a player do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
I mean, a player usually, I mean, in my experience, I usually get pretty accurate shots on the people I'm shooting at. You know what I mean? I use controlled bursts. I don't use fully automatic. And, you know, I can usually land shots. I usually aim for just straight center mass every time. But, you know, I feel like the scavs, yeah, they're kind of like civilians, right? But the Marauders, so they've probably been shooting people for a while now. They're not just like fresh out of being a fucking little scab cheeky breaky. Like, they've been doing this probably for, you know, maybe a month or so, or however long the events of Tarkov have been happening. So
my question is just in regards to what you said there. Is in regards to the long range stuff, do you think it's down to their accuracy, or is this an issue in regards to when they said that they're going to only engage based on like realistic distances and effective range? Do you believe that it's just a case that the scavs are not following the effective range guideline and are trying to shoot you at like 100 to 150 feet with a shotgun, as opposed to the fact that their accuracy is actually just lesser?
I would say that, you know, if I engage a scout with a rifle, they'll engage me at a normal distance. I feel like shotguns, they engage you a little still too far away. I think it would be neat to see if they had, like, say, if they're, you know, had a pistol or a shotgun, maybe submachine gun, and they saw you, they would just fall back because they would just know, like, hey, there's no way I'm going to shoot this guy from this far away. So I'm going to fall back and hide, wait for him to get close to me, and then we can engage. If there's like some kind of mechanic like that or code, I think that would really improve that whole issue, instead of them just kind of being like, oh, there he is, I'm just going to run at him until I get close enough to shoot him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
I feel like it's just a matter of them not following range distances. If they're like, one scav has a Makarov, one scav has an AKN, they will both shoot me from the same distance, and the Makarov scav will have the same accuracy as the AK scav. The Makarov scav will bust out one of my legs, fuck up my arm, I'll have to fall back and then kill him. Same thing with the AK scav. The Makarov is only effective in game and in real life at about 50 meters.
Yeah, it's a
He
380
shouldn't
or
be shooting me from across factory like the AK scab is. I think I don't think it's accuracy. I think I have a hard time I'm confusing accuracy with them not following the range distance. A Makarov is not as accurate as an AK from that far away, but to the scabs, they're both as accurate.
What? I'm gonna get there, probably.
Yeah, I can see that what that means. Like, another thing I think I noticed is rate of fire. That the
Yeah.
scavs tend to shoot at a very consistent rate. Like, if I get in a scav's face, I would expect him to like attempt to mag dump into me if he had a handgun or something like that. And they just fire like maybe one shot every half a second at most.
yeah, they'll go pow pow pow.
Yeah,
pow,
it's
pow.
not like a player who will like attempt to unload his whole magazine into you at close range. And if they had to sum out a shotgun or handgun, I'd expect them to do that, or to go full auto with a gun and try to perforate you. But they don't seem to do that very much. They seem to follow a very consistent fire rate. And I think that maybe making them go full auto, like, would that make them more lethal? Well, if they're using a stockless AK, they might just end up shooting high after the first two shots. And I think that should be fair, that they should be, you know, maybe a little more panicky when you're up close, because they might get worried themselves. And I feel that the scabs are behaving more intelligently, but they act too cold. These don't feel like people to me as much as they could be. You know, they should be afraid of their own lives, although they seem like they mock you regardless of what's happening. They only seem to like give a shit when you actually kill them and they're like dying. Other than that, they don't really seem that scared or that afraid of you, which is kind of confusing to me. I would think that it would maybe humanize and make them a little bit more believable if they acted in ways that were maybe more involved, related to self-preservation, like, you know, taking more shots even if it's more wasteful. Because I think currently they feel like they're very calculated, a little too much maybe.
Yeah, falling back to what you said, I have seen rarely scabs with pistols. I have seen them dump a whole mag on me when I'm close to go pow 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 pow. They'll dump their entire mag, but I've only seen it very rarely, like maybe a handful of times. And I think it could be a bug, but I have seen it before.
Only those handgun ones too.
Exactly. I've never seen the AK one. Shotguns, I've noticed the shotgun guys will, they'll dump their whole, if they have the semi-automatic, they'll dump their mag on you as fast as they can. Same thing with the Saiga. And speaking of shotguns, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but they're way too nerfed in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think they still do fine.
I think there is a medium that needs to be changed in the sense of shotguns, where I think the effective range has, I think it's more a scab thing. I think they work pretty fine in regards to factory. I think a little bit more range would be nice, and I don't feel that the slug is as effective as it should be. But
yeah, the slug needs to be fixed, because currently it's sometimes wildly inaccurate, and that kind of makes it pointless, because the point of a slug is, oh, I'm trying to, instead of relying on a buckshot spread, I'm trying to get a single large projectile on target, and if it's wildly inaccurate, that defeats the purpose of using slugs over buckshot.
Right. And I just want to say something real quick to all you guys showing in. I had the same issue right when I popped in. You have to turn on push to talk if you guys want to join the discussion. I know a lot of guys max or X'd out. Just click the gear icon, turn on push to talk, and you guys can join the discussion. I was trying to talk, and I was like, why can't they hear me? I'm like, oh, I don't have push to talk on. So you have to enable it.
cheers.
No, it's okay, no problem.
Okay, so I'm going to move off scabs just a little bit, because I think we're sitting here and there's a lot of information coming in. There's a lot of videos coming out from a lot of people at the moment in regards to scabs. So I think we can move on past that. And one thing I want to touch on is one of the bigger features that they added, and they said they're going to review. So I'd like to get your opinions on it right now, which is the combat healing, where if a limb or a part of your body drops to 0, you can heal it, and the negative effects.
Actually, just got a really good question answered. Dev George was in my stream yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And currently, there's a bug with the blacked out items where you should be able to stop the bleeding. That is something that is a bug. It's not intended to be like that. It should be getting fixed soon. I know they said there's going to be a patch sometime next week that'll have some bug fixes and a lot of optimizations. And so, yeah, I was just letting you guys know so that, people aren't flaring about that, but that will be fixed.
Cool. So overall, not being able to repair your body, we've had a week and a little bit of this. What's your impression?
I think it's horrible. It's really horrible. I think you shouldn't be able to heal it up, but I think you should be able to fix all of the status effects. Because when you think about it, fairly soon here, according to the stream the other day, your health will carry over into after game after you extract. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to heal your leg to back up to 70, but you should be able to stop it from bleeding, which they obviously said it was a bug according to Cleanup Guy. You should be able to splint your leg, especially if you get shot in the leg with a Makarov, by another player and it busts your leg out and you're at the beginning of woods or the beginning of factory. There's no way that you're going to limp all the way across that fucking map and live. There's no way.
I think there should be a timer on it. I think there should be some sort of, like, I don't know, 4 to 5 minutes. Because I understand. I think it should be a very what's the word? I think it should affect you more than just, oh, I can fix it right away. But I agree. The other day I jumped off a rock in the woods and broke both my legs, and I just disconnected. I disconnected. I'm like, I ain't doing this.
Personally, for me, I really enjoy this mechanic. I think it's great. I like it. I mean, other than the fact you can't stop your bleeding, which is the only thing I don't like, but having still the negative effects of having a potentially mortal wound in combat just makes this game that much more risky. What the developers have commented on this is they said, when your limb reaches 0, it is essentially at the point where you need surgery. You have taken so much damage, you need to have surgery, and there's nothing field medicine can do. Obviously, there would be balances like you can stop the bleeding so you won't bleed out and stuff like that. But I personally like this mechanic a lot because it just kind of adds another one of those dynamics that makes people need to play more cautious. Be like, hey, if I get shot or, if I'm not careful here, I could survive this firefight, but then I'll get fucked. Look at what happened at the end. I'm sure you've all seen the action gameplay trailer, when the bear guys are fighting the USEC, and then you have the Russian bear guy, and at the very end he's limping around and he's having to fucking fight scabs as he's trying to escape, and then he eventually gets killed. I feel like that's kind of the same grasp that they're trying to get with this. They're trying to make it like, if you get these wounds, like, you're almost as good as fucked, but you can still survive.
So
but that works on factory, but it doesn't work on the bigger, like on factory, it's perfect. It adds to the realism. It's amazing. But then when it goes to bigger maps, like customs or woods, if you get unlucky and you get your leg broken at the beginning, you're fucked. You've already lost. You might as well.
I've escaped. I personally escaped plenty of times with a broken leg that was bleeding. I've gotten out of customs and woods.
What about this for an idea? This came in from Creon, and what's your opinion that if you have a busted leg but you splint it, you get a plus 25 movement speed?
I like that. I think that would be great. Like you get maybe that could be used for the morphine, and maybe morphine could be, say, like a timed effect to stop the pain, to help you move faster, and it lasts for like 2 minutes, and then once the morphine wears off, you're in pain again and you slow down.
You could like buff your movement speed with splints and morphine and stuff, but you can't ever fix it when it's at 0 to the point where you'd be able to sprint again. That would be good.
It kind of works like the energy drinks in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Like, you drink one of these energy drinks, it increases your speed for a short period of time and your metabolism, like your heal rate or something like that. I feel like there should be kind of some effects with the medicine just like that as well.
So when considering like exactly what they meant by, if you read limb reaches 0, you need integrity or it's totally busted or something, this to me is a fine system, but only if it gets incurred by blood loss. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because, like, say you get a nice grazing, a bleeding wound from a stray bullet into your leg. You started at 50, but you're bleeding, and it bleeds all the way down to 0. Now you're limping. That doesn't make any sense to me. Somehow you busted your leg from bleeding. This is where I think that either you need to change it that only a shot that takes it immediately down to 0 in a single shot would have that effect, and implement that as a separate system that's like a critical wound, or alternatively, I think there needs to be 2 separate things where you have overall bodily integrity, where each part of your body has a different integrity state. And then there's blood. And those 2 things are kept separate, where you can restore blood using saline bags or transfusions or whatnot. And you can't, but you can only partially restore integrity. Like this, you could do it maybe with some bandages to some extent or something. But I think that those two systems maybe need to be separated, because losing overall integrity because of blood loss to me doesn't really jive with
Yeah,
how
that doesn't make sense.
medic stuff works. Like you can stop the bleeding, but some people will still be fucked up, or you can fix their other states, but then if they keep bleeding, like they're not gonna suddenly, I said, lose an arm or a leg or something because they just been having something of a seeping wound.
That's something I actually just thought of, because I know there's blood pressure in the game, and there's a metabolism feature, as well as blood loss, and you can use medkits to heal limbs and stuff. What if there was a point where, say, you took a certain amount of blood loss, and now there's a soft cap applied to that limb, and you can only, say, get 20 out of the 35 of the limb. You stop the bleeding, and you're all the way healed back up to the maximum amount for that limb. But what if you need to, say, eat some food to increase your blood sugar or white blood cell count again? You need to drink like an energy drink or something that will slowly start lifting that soft cap, and it'll heal, with that soft cap, essentially.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair, but I
kind
think
of
that
like DC with the blood loss.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think we still want to avoid Wolverine syndrome, where people heal remarkably from grievous injury. Like, I do think that if you want to keep this game tactical, you can only... Ultimately, the point I'm trying to dissect with how do we balance blood loss against, say, overall limb and body integrity and all these other factors, that I want to make it so that if you're injured in the game, it's serious. You can maybe prevent blood loss. Also, like, maybe... would there be incremental blood loss fix? Like, for example, you can like tourniquet or partially bandage a wound, but that doesn't necessarily entirely stop the bleeding. It'll slow it down. But if you like run around or move really quickly, you're going to put more pressure or exertion on that wound, and it might seep more. So it might encourage you to slow down voluntarily. I think that should be something where injury should feel more dynamic and not simply like a fixed state to be eliminated or treated.
I feel like where you said slow down is a key factor. Just another thing Creon mentioned is internal blood loss isn't something that you can exactly stop. Where I feel that where you said you can maybe slow down the bleed would be a fix to this. In regards to like trying to find the mechanics, and I know it's not our job to how do we fix this or what do we do, but I do think internal blood loss is something that shouldn't be able to be fixed, but I do think the concept of slowing down a bleed is also like a massive way forward. Like clipping an artery, for example, you're not going to stop it. You might slow it down, but that's about it. Is there anything more in regards to the combat healing? Someone mentioned it really quickly. I wanted to talk about was fall damage. I found that of this patch, fall damage like occurs at stupidly low heights. Does anybody agree with this?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not as bad as DayZ, where like falling from literally 3 feet might break your legs, and you'll have to like shimmy across the ground on your belly. But yeah,
I have that happen actually in this game.
You have had that happen?
Yeah, I've had my legs broken on my lockers.
That might be a physics thing. That simply might be a bug, or it spikes the physics engine for a second. I do not know.
Yes.
Something I would like to see, two things. A skill related to how much fall damage you can take. I don't know exactly how much you'd buff this. Maybe it's just like you just kind of take a little more risky jumps, and it kind of ups that skill. And secondly, the more weight you have on you, the more fall damage is done to you. Because if you have 80 pounds of gear and you jump off 10 feet, you're going to land pretty fucking hard. Like your ankles and knees are going to hurt. You might sprain something if you're not careful. But if you have the skill, and this is when we kind of get into the MMO elements, if you have the skills, be like, oh, I'm jumping off, shit a bunch of times. So now I can make this jump without really injuring myself. And that can be like kind of correlated with the endurance skill, where it kind of counteracts your movement speed to how much you can carry.
Cool. I'm going to move us on to probably just the final aspect of this now, which is the bugs, and in regards to like any fixes what we potentially have, because I do have to run in a couple of minutes, but I'm going to leave everybody obviously still able to discuss. Bug-wise, is there any game-breaking features that you guys have experienced in the last little while? I think the one that I'm just going to point out first is, for some reason, we can now no longer lie down under certain circumstances. There's the shed roof I can't lie down on. I find it very hard to lie down when looting a body.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like this is something I don't know what it is, but I feel needs to be addressed. Is there something that you guys have come across which is like a complete
The
game breaker?
one I would say the one is a total game breaker, or two. When you're looting somebody's inventory, or say your friend's looting his inventory and he's stuck in the animation where he has his hand by his hip, like he's searching something, he can still shoot his gun and there's no more gunshots. That you cannot hear, no snaps, nothing. It's just death. You just die from nothing. And there's another bug where gunshots are completely silent. You hear no impacts, you hear no gunshots, no gunfire, nothing. And I think this is actually a bug with suppressed weapons and how the sounds are working with that. I know after a certain distance, if you're using subsonic rounds, you can't hear snaps, but you'll hear the impacts, and that's kind of scary. Whereas most of the time, you just don't hear anything at all. You just hear you're dead. And so I would say the gunshots not registering and syncing up per players and with the server is one of the biggest issues, because I can't tell you how many times, I was shooting at somebody and I ran up on him. I thought he was out of ammo because I didn't hear any more gunshots. He stopped shooting and he just looked at me and I died. I just fell over and I was like, oh shit, I thought he was reloading. So I would say that's one of the biggest ones for me.
Okay, so can I like trim this down to say that people are able to shoot while the animation doesn't reflect the fact that they're holding a weapon?
It's animation and the sound.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a game-breaking feature or not, but I think that gamma container needs to be addressed. I mean, just the fact that you can take out an invisible weapon from a gamma container, perhaps even assault rifles later, I think that is not a good thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree when they said that you could hold a whole assault rifles. I kind of get, it is also a game. It is also a game. You got to remember that.
But I mean, with everything else, they go for realism. One thing would be if they would be able to put a weapon into the gamma container in the raid, but not take it out in the raid. That would be a fix to it. But
it could take longer. You could just make it so that transfer time is a lot longer.
Yeah, you could do that as well, or anything, because I find that if somebody can whip out a gun, assault rifle, or a cadder from nowhere,
the guy has a hatchet and then just whips out an AK from the castle. Like,
it's like Rust all over again.
I have one massive issue, and exactly what you said in relation to Rust is I have this one major concern about the concept of an Amiga container. So obviously a container that can take anything up to an assault rifle is in Rust. Back in the legacy days, we had this massive issue, and I know many games have had it, where players would just Alt F4 in combat if they knew that they would lose a fight. And I feel like the Amiga container is just introducing an option to, shit, I've just ran into 3 guys. Quick tab and drag my assault rifle into Amiga and hide around the corner so that he doesn't get my fully loaded M4.
Yeah, that is true. But the worst scenario is actually when he has it already in the game container. He comes up to you, hey, friendly, whips out an AK, kills 5 guys. Yeah. You understand what I mean?
Fucking AK.
Okay, so it's not necessary. So it's more so the like Rust naked guy has an AK.
Yeah, you've seen the video when he's standing outside and luring 2 guys out and kills them with AK.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's fun.
It's funny, but it's not realistic. No.
No, it's for this game. I mean, it's game breaking. For Rust, it's fun maybe, but for this game, I think it's stupid. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
Real quickly, regarding that audio bug with shooting and bullets, I'm fairly sure it can be corrected in game by swapping weapons and swapping back.
There are times when it's not just the inventory. There's a couple points where, like I said, I've gotten in firefights with guys, and they didn't have the bug. They were still, they're in the shoulder position with their weapon, and I would hear the gunshots, and then all of a sudden there would be no gunshots, and then I would just fall over and die after I heard nothing.
Also, I haven't heard the 1 frame issue mentioned on customs yet.
I think that's going to be fixed here coming up.
So yeah, it was mentioned earlier on in the sense of that people are dropping down to like anything less than 5 FPS for.
So why is that? Anybody know why?
Negative.
That's memory leak, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would assume it's like partially to do with the massive memory leak with the anti-cheat system, the fact that customs is unoptimized, and it's just kind of like all of this coming together is just, a catastrophic memory failure.
Also, for those of you guys who don't know, the devs came out and spoke like a month ago. Customs is actually a stress test map for the server and the client side. There's over 80,000 objects being rendered on screen at a time, depending on where you're looking. So that's part of it. They're using that as like a benchmark for their engine currently. I think that a lot of this will change later on down the line with the development. I've noticed after the last patch, the frame rate has been better than it was prior. Maybe it had to do with them optimizing, expanding the map a bit. but just know that is a stress test map. It is actually intended to not be able to run super well.
Cool. So, guys, I have to run. Will I leave you guys at it, or
I'll run it for you. I'll ask some questions
you're
because
an
I got
absolute hero,
something I
Clint.
want to.
Cheers
Yeah,
for that.
I'll send you notes in Discord.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Clean, you're an absolute hero for hosting me. And for everybody else for tuning in, thanks a million, and I'll see you later.
Amen.
Right, thanks,
Take it
mate.
easy.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, another subject I wanted to bring up and is armor specifically, not just fort armor, but also soft armor. One thing that I feel, there is a balance right now with armor, whereas if you do have armor piercing ammo, you can shoot right through the armor and ignore it, but there's obviously a lack of any kind of AP ammo in the game. I've even noticed the SP5 ammo from the VSS is no longer as strong as it was, say, against soft armor or fort armor. And one mechanic or feature that I would like to see implemented is, so say if I go up to a guy in fort armor and I unload a whole 60-round magazine of 5.56 into him at like 10 meters, and he can just turn and shoot me in the face, he should take some kind of damage. I feel like if you take 60 rounds to your chest, that should break some ribs. That should do some damage to your body. It might not make you bleed, but it'll hurt you. And I want to know what you guys kind of think about that and what kind of balances you'd like to see done to armor.
We were discussing this yesterday, actually, me and a couple of guys, and I think they said that they will introduce unconsciousness later into the game. And I do believe that, like you say, you should break some ribs, go out of breath, take some kind of damage. I think you should go unconscious, actually, if somebody loads 60
Stagger
rounds.
damage, even not being able to run, like stutter step, anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where like bodily integrity would relate to it pretty well, is having a separate stat from bleeding or any other sort of like surface skin loss. So yeah, like if you get shot a ton with, you might not incur bleeding or severe health damage, but you could have a lot of blunt trauma, bruising, and possibly cracked ribs and such, and those would figure into your overall chest integrity or something.
Kind of like the bone stat again in the AC. Kind of.
Sure.
But yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Another one I wanted to mention is kind of going back to the medical system. Is what do you guys think some balances should be done towards medical items? Because I know a lot of items, like Vaseline shouldn't cure toxicity or stop a fracture. And this is also in regards to the animation system, because currently you can put items on a hotkey and you can just kind of heal yourself on the fly while taking damage and still be able to fight. And I know when the animation system is implemented for the medical system, you'll actually have to stop and have a long animation depending on what you're using. So say the Salewa, you have to sit there for 6 seconds with an animation, whereas with a bandage, you'll only be there for 1 second or 2 seconds.
I would expect kind of longer, but I guess it's the dev's decision. Like, I don't know. I don't think bandaging just takes 2 seconds. Like, I mean,
do you think it should take depending on the severity of the wound?
Yeah, like it might, like bandaging yourself properly could take like a minute or two, and I know that's like a lot of time. But this is the thing where shooting a player a couple times in the legs and he has to go retreat and heal, like that gives the player who got the first shots off a tactical advantage. But maybe you don't know, oh, did I really hit him or do I only think I hit him? And that's once again that introduces the element of unpredictability. If you could just say, oh, he just ran by in a quarter, he just healed. Like, that's too predictable. I think, like, the other thing, we didn't really talk about this in the medical system, but I know that healing other players, I don't know if that's still planned or not, but I still think that's important because that, like, designating someone to carry a lot of medical supplies and do that sort of thing, I think is an important part of, like, team play. And maybe other people could be freed up to carry more ammo or other stuff or whatnot. But in any case, I think that heal times should be considerably longer, because you can't just like the heal time they are now, it feels like you're just like ripping open a bag, like stuffing some like gauze down your shirt, and it's like it's all good. Like, that's a little silly to me.
But you have to think like this as well. Sorry for interrupting you, but when you actually have to drop down your weapon, drop your guard, and do it, those 2, 3, or 4 seconds are way longer just because you have to drop your weapon. It's going to change up the dynamic of the gameplay completely. Because now you can heal and shoot at the same time. So
that's true. Yeah.
So I mean, if you're talking like 30 seconds to put a bandage on, then you're fucked. If you get, oh, sorry for the bad language, but then you're done. If somebody shoots you in the leg, then because then you have to stand for 30 seconds to heal. I mean, that's crazy.
But I think that's a fair trade-off for, you know, the severity of injury. I think that, like, that's why I brought up hearing, like, potential hearing loss, that I brought up these other things that, yeah, like, it's playing, if we don't penalize players for either poor decision making, because a lot of times when you get injured, I've noticed that a lot of times I've gotten injured, it's because I haven't thought about the situation. I decide, like, oh, guys shoot at me, I'm gonna go shoot back at him. And, like, encouraging players to not do things that are risky, like avoiding injury at all costs, all these things, I think that changes the gameplay so that people are no longer as careless. Like friendly fire, for example, is like, can be anything from possibly lethal, which it is sometimes, to just sort of careless. And like, oh, you shot me, whatever. Like, accidentally shooting your buddy shouldn't be just like, oh, whatever, excuse me. Like, it needs to carry some consequence that you might inflict a permanent wound for the match. And I don't think that making it so, like if you, the idea is that another thing is, like, as I said with bleed out, like changing it from, like, as I said, introducing integrity from bleeding, I think would be important, because overall, like, you can die pretty quickly if you have a bad enough bleed. But if integrity and bleeding are separated, you know, getting that, you know, wound you said you need to go retreat to heal in the leg, maybe you have another minute or two to hunt down the guy before you have to go heal it, because the bleeding just takes longer and it's not related to overall integrity. And I think that's a fair trade-off, that if you change the injury system so that, yeah, you can let your leg bleed for a minute or two before you kill this guy and go heal it, I think that makes it more fair that injuries, yes, are more serious, but they aren't like as wonky as because they're a little bit wonky in implementation, where like, oh, I got a grazing head wound and I check and it's like, oh, I'm at 3 health, and then I immediately die. And it's like, well, what was that? Like, changing a system so that it's more fair, that either, as I said, integrity plus total amount of blood in the body, like that system, I think would make it so that the having a more involved healing and medical treatment mechanic would pair better with that sort of system than the one maybe that there is now.
I understand what you mean. And what you said there, with having total amount of blood in your body instead of per body part, just health per body part, is probably better.
Okay, these are some good things. I'm writing these all down right now and send a Castano. Trying to think of something else.
Tips and tricks, or
I'm spacing, drawing a blank. I honestly just woke up and I got a message and I was like, "Hey, Tarkov Today is going on." And she come in. I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, I'll get up. I'll sleep again." I'm drawing a blank. Does anybody have anything? Anybody else got anything any things they'd like to talk about? Wanted features, anything like that? Needed fixes.
Another bug I've encountered is sometimes I'll get stuck in location, and then I'll like wiggle around. Like, it's occasionally happened. It's kind of hilarious, where I'll like wrench my upper torso from my lower torso so I can see my legs just floating in space right where I am, and I can still look around, but I don't think I can shoot. But I'm now like some bizarre, like horrifying half split in half person. And I don't know exactly what's causing that bug, but it's happened sometimes where I'll like sort of have a physical body disconnect. Maybe it's related to the animation system, but it's happened to me a couple times.
Another thing I was thinking about, I don't know if it's the right forum to take it here, but objects that pop in and pop out all the time I find it to be quite severe in this game, actually.
I believe that's actually a limitation in the game engine right now because of the game's graphics are such of a high fidelity. The DirectX 9 engine cannot handle any LED qualities or render distances out that far without a mass hit on your performance and on your CPU as well as your GPU, because they're not being utilized fully. I would imagine this will be changed once the DirectX 11 comes out, because again, DX9 is a much more older architecture for games, and I'm almost certain it has to do with that, because the reason why LED quality is on 2, if you bump that shit up any higher, it doesn't matter what system you have, your FPS is going to tank.
Well, probably. I'm just mentioning it because I mean, like on factory, if you stand up by the little box on the catwalk thing there and look down towards the glass hall, even the wooden pallet there standing against a barrel or something, even when I have my graphics on highest, it just pops out and you can't shoot through it. So
one example that I have is you guys know the area on customs behind the trains in the industrial area where there's like those boxes and rubble and stuff. Well, I remember one point I was actually pretty far away and I saw 2 players and I started shooting at them, and I was like, I'm aiming right at them, why am I not hitting them? Eventually I got through and I killed them when I got closer, and then I go and look, I was shooting these 2 fucking crates that were in front of them the entire time, where I could not even see because of the pop-in. It can be an issue there,
exactly.
from a gameplay perspective. So somebody looks like he's behind cover, doesn't look like he's behind cover, but he actually is.
Exactly, because I found that the players and scouts are rendering in fine from long distances, just other objects are not. So that's what I meant exactly.
I agree. Well, guys, I'm gonna head out. It's been real. I will talk to you guys very, very soon, and hopefully see you guys next week. If you guys want to hop in, I'm going to announce this. The devs are going to announce this a little later, but I'll just tell you guys now since you're here. I got 10 alpha test keys as well as 2 standard edition game keys that will be given away all week next week on stream. So if you guys want to hop in, maybe enter in for a chance of one for your buddy or something like that, just come and kick it, rings.
Okay.
I'll talk to you guys later.